Great. Which is it possible that people who were addicted to drugs or alcohol or some gambling or some other behavior get addicted to the addiction community? Because one thing that I think I observe over and over is that there's some circuit in the brain of human beings that has to tell you about the dream they had the night before for whatever reason. There's another circuit that leads people to wake you up if they themselves can't sleep. I don't know what circuit is. I'm being facetious here. But there does seem to also be a circuit in the brain of addicts to discuss and want to kind of talk about their recovery a lot. And I mention this not to poke at them, but rather the opposite, because I think that one thing that is challenging, at least for me and having friends that have a propensity for drug or alcohol addiction, not all of them, but certainly some of them, is when they're talking about their recovery, I feel like it's all they talk about. This meeting, that meeting. How are we, so what I'm really asking here is that can we become addicted to sobriety?
Right. So this is a great question, and it links into some of the other things we've been talking about, having to do with where do we settle out? What is the way to live between pleasure and pain? And I implied earlier that ultimately we want a resilient balance that's sensitive to pleasure and pain, but that can easily restore homeostasis after we indulge, even when we indulge greatly. But the truth of the matter is that people with severe addiction, I believe, temperamentally want those extremes, and they're wired for that kind of intensity that is more than just these slight adjustments around the fulcrum, right? It's like they want the big highs and the big lows.
They'll say great meeting.
Yeah,
They're like, that was such an amazing meeting. Or they find a group.
Yeah.
They find a group in a location.
Yeah.
Like this is almost an inside joke in those communities. Again, I'm not talking about a friend in quotes. This isn't me reporting. Well, they'll talk about how attractive people are at a given meeting, or how bonded they feel to people at a given meeting, that the meetings themselves become their own form of dopamine hit.
Yes.
And again, I'm not being disparaging. Yeah. I want to understand this.
Right. So yes. So a lot of times patients will say to me, I don't want to go to AA. It's a cult. And my response to that is, because it's a cult is exactly why it works. Okay. Right. Because yes, it is much better for you to be addicted to AA and to recovery than almost any other addiction I could think of. And we know from Rob Malenka's work, who's here at Stanford, that oxytocin, is the hormone that's involved in human pair bonding and relationships and love. And it directly links to dopamine neurons and causes the release of dopamine. So yes, when we connect with other humans, especially in a kind of transcendent spiritual way, that's a huge dopamine hit. And it does replace the dopamine that people get from drugs. And for people who have this addiction temperament, they need it on a more intense level. They're not going to be generally satisfied with kind of, a sort of acquaintanceship, right? They want that intensity of the intimacy that you get with people when you're cathartically exposing, warts and all. So yes, people can get addicted to recovery, and good for them. Go for it, and of course this can be disruptive for friendships and relationships where the one person is not in recovery. Like, you're going to so many meetings, you're always talking about recovery, but you know what? Much better than them being intoxicated, right? I mean, so although you may tire of your friends talking about their meetings all the time, I'm sure you would rather have them do that than be in their addiction. So
yeah, absolutely.